Yeah.
Recording.
Hi everyone, I'm Skyler. I do a lot of work on the mobile apps here, so um, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about the technical side of that, how you build them, and how you debug them. Um, so Collabora are on iOS and Android. They're very similar to each other, and they're also very similar to Collabora Online in your browser. Um, in fact, here's an oversimplified view of what your browser might be. So you have a web view as part of your browser, and it connects over WebSocket to a Collabora online server. And in the mobile apps, uh, it's very similar. You have a web view that's in our mobile app that's provided by your operating system, and then we have uh, a fake WebSocket-like connection to Collabora Online col.WSD server running on your device in proc. Um, and that means that you can only have a single allocated instance, but as we have only a single file, that's okay. The file loading there is a little bit different. That goes through Java or Objective-C, depending on whether you're in Android or iOS. But by the time you've loaded the file, a lot of the stuff is going to be very similar to what you see if you're running Collabora Online in your browser normally. And this is quite handy actually, because it means that it's quite easy to debug this quite often, because you might get a bug that happens in mobile, but actually it also happens in a browser on mobile, which means that you can use your normal Collabora Online setup and you can debug it exactly how you would normally do. And stuff in online might just work in mobile. So if we add a new feature, there's a fair chance that if it works in the browser, the mobile apps get that for free. But you can't always just use online builds, because sometimes bugs only occur in one place. Um, for example, if there are bugs that touch how the file loading works, uh, recently in Android, there was a bug where the progress bar wouldn't show when you were loading a file, and that was Android specific. There was no way you could reproduce that in a browser. It could also be quite easy to break things. They do work slightly differently to Collabora Online in your browser, which means that if you are writing a feature in Collabora Online, you can sometimes end up breaking a mobile app, and features don't always work immediately as well. So in Android again, we have had to turn off exporting a PDF with advanced options because that feature didn't work. We implemented it and it worked in Collabora Online, um, but when it came to Android, it would never finish and it hung the app. So we had to disable that. Unlike online, there are native client bits. So I mentioned loading files. Um, Other things are fonts, for example. On iOS, you have a font picker that opens up the native font picker. So when you're choosing what font you have in your document, you will get the list of fonts provided by your system, and that's native. And Collabora Online doesn't traditionally run in proc, and there are sometimes bugs that will only happen in proc. You can actually make it run in proc with col.WSD in proc instead of col.WSD. But this isn't the default, so when you're using make run, for example, it won't do that. And some bits online are conditional on if we're using a mobile app. So we have window.this is the Android app, window.this is the iOS app. And actually I've done a grep, and here are the instances of this is the Android app. These are all for little mobile app specific bits of code. So for example, we may want the on-screen keyboard to do something different when we're in a mobile app, because we know there's going to be one. And that can cause slight differences that can end up causing bugs. Mobile devices normally have touch screens as well. If you are debugging Collabora online and expecting to reproduce a bug that appears on mobile, try it on a device with a touchscreen. Touchscreens function a little bit differently in Collabora Online. So we detect whether an event is a touch event, and then we handle it slightly differently in some cases. For example, a long press of a touchscreen will open a menu, whereas a long press of your mouse won't. So remember to test this on a mobile device. And a simulated touch device, while you can get closer, using the touch event simulation on Chrome, for example, is not always going to get you exactly the same as using a mobile device. For example, because mobile devices have some level of imprecision when you're tapping, and when you're using a mouse, you probably are very much more precise. So you might end up with a bug that relies on something having moved a little bit, and that's not going to be so easy to reproduce on Collabora. So let's get on to building the mobile apps. Instructions for building Android and iOS apps are on our community website. There are some QR codes to the posts in the slide if you want to scan them. I have recently updated the Android one. I think that's still in review, so hopefully by the time this gets out on YouTube, that should be up for you. But until then, the old instructions should still work. They might just be a little harder to do. For iOS, you need an Apple Developer Program subscription and a Mac with Xcode. And that's because we use capabilities like iCloud, which you can only use with an Apple Developer Program subscription. So if you don't have that, I'm sorry, you can't build the iOS app. For Android, it's good to have Android Studio. You don't require it. You can do it with Gradle, but it helps a lot with debugging, as you will see later. So the build steps are fairly similar on Android and OS. I'm going to give a quick outline here. Again, more detailed instructions are on our site. Generally, you clone and build core, you build a version for your specific mobile device, you clone and build online, and then you use your IDE. So that would be Android Studio or Xcode to build the mobile app and install it on your device. So onto debugging. Android Studio and Xcode have debuggers for mobile devices. You will have to include the debugging symbols for core if you are trying to debug core code using the debuggers, because that won't be included by default in the project. But once you have, you can set breakpoints on core functions, and you will be able to see variables, etc. One tip I have is LLDB is provided in both Android Studio and in Xcode, and it's really helpful to get you to files that may not be in the project because they are in core, and without having to navigate through your file system and find them. You can break set -name with a class and a function name, and that will set it in a much simpler way than trying to find the right file. So for a little bit of an example, here's Android Studio. Here's this file does not belong to any project target. Code insight features might not work properly. Warning that I was talking about with this is from core. It's calcmove.cxx, and it's Android Studio doesn't recognize it as part of the online project, so you can't navigate to it in this file tree on the left hand side normally. To start debugging, you click this little bug symbol up here, and then you will be brought this sort of menu where you have your app and your app, but in Java. This is the native part of the app. This is the Java part of the app. Probably you want to spend most of the time debugging the native part of the app. And probably you want to be in the Threads and Variables tab because that has your stack. It has all of the variables when you're paused, and it also has the LLDB console again when you're paused, and that can help you again set breakpoints on places that might be a little bit harder to reach. Another thing you might be interested in is logcat. This little cat icon on the left-hand side of the IDE shows you all of your Android devices logs, and you can filter those by only the ones that are in Collabora, and then you'll see, for example, messages to and from the server, and that can be very useful for debugging. In iOS with Xcode, it's much the same thing. You can see this like logcat type log here again. This time the debug button is just a play symbol, and when you break on a point, you get all of your stack along the left hand side, your variables over here, and your LLDB console with your kind of logging output. Yeah. Now let's talk about debugging in the web view. So most of your debugging is not necessarily in core. There's a lot of bugs that happen entirely in JavaScript, and for those you'll need to debug the web view. So luckily, you can use remote debugging tools in the browser that you're probably already using. So Safari has remote debugging tools for iOS. Chrome has them for Android. Keep your browser up to date, and more specifically, on the same version as your phone. It's very easy for those to get out of sync, and then quite often there will be issues with connecting to the device, or you won't be able to see your web view in your debugger, and you'll be like, oh no, what's going on? Well, it's that you didn't keep your browser up to date. So here's what Chrome's Chrome Inspect page looks like. That's how you access the remote debugger. You click the little inspect button underneath this web view, and it will bring you into what looks like a Chrome debugger. You have these four buttons can activate quite useful functions for you. So this one activates screen mirroring. These two switch whether you're doing touch input or mouse input simulation if you click on your browser. And sometimes it can be quite nice to have it next to a debugger rather than just on your device. You can see this is just a normal Chrome debug session. So you've got your sources in here. You can set breakpoints. You can see your console. You can search in files. All the things you'd expect to be able to do. Another tip, I guess. The normal ways of debugging Collabora Online still very much apply here. So going and activating the debug tools by going into the menu, about, and triple clicking will still give you all your protocol logs here, and that's as in debugging Collabora Online, it's invaluable. That's all I've got for the presentation. Thank you very much for listening. Feel free to ask any questions.
Thank you, Skyler. So, in a traditional fashion, I go one by one and ask if anyone has questions. So I will start with you, Miklos.
Oh, I would have, thanks for the presentation. It was a nice one. I would have one question. I know that when you create a new project in Android Studio, then you get this skeleton Android tasks where it tries to give you some starting point on how to test your app. And I guess we mostly don't do any of that because our app is just a web view from the Android point of view. Do you think that it would be possible to like if you would be given a bit of time to do some kind of UI testing on Android, like just click here and there and expect that, for example, PDF export produces a PDF in your Android file system or something like this? Can you
I would really, yeah, I would really like to do that. Yeah. I think right now we have Cypress testing where we are effectively simulating an like an Android web view and clicking around in it with a like Collabora online server. And that's yeah, it's not as good as testing the Android app because, for example, if we have a bug that stops files from loading altogether, then we just won't spot that in our Android tests. So yeah, it would be very good to do that, I think.
But it's like it's a matter of finding the time. There is no conceptual block there that this would be like impossible, right?
No. Well,
Uh,
I can add some things. Yeah, Android has all the necessary APIs to be able to emulate any actions on the UI, just like a web driver, but even further. So it's just a matter of implementation.
Indeed. Thanks, Mevin.
Thank you.
Thanks. Mevin?
Well, I didn't have a particular question. Maybe just one curiosity. Well, I saw this is the Android application. I'm guessing using macros would be too hard to isolate code and strip code away from the mobile apps. Well, I know it's not mature for JavaScript. It's just something that jumped to my mind.
Sorry, can you clarify what the question is?
Yeah, so well, it wasn't much of a question. I kind of know the answer. So it's the fact that we don't use macros to strip code from the Android version apps in JavaScript, but rather have runtime checks.
Oh,
This is really a detail, and I know that for JavaScript, well, we're not in C++, so.
yeah, correct. We don't do macros to do that. I
This must
guess
be very
could.
negligible anyway.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it could be possible to, for example, have some like stub methods and have Android specific methods in one file and not include that in the build of Collabora Online. But I'm not sure. That's not what we do anyway. We do runtime checks.
Thanks. Rashesh? If not, nothing. Okay, thanks. Ezina?
No question. Thank you, Pedro.
Okay. Attila?
No questions, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Madam? Okay. Quaylan?
I suppose two small things. If the Cypress tests are only run on, shall we say, the ordinary online version to emulate testing on Android, I presume the same is true for like make check, the basic make check in the test directory. So is there any kind of a automatic smoke test that's part of the build for Android or iOS?
No. So we the CI that you see that's like Android is only testing that it has built. And then we do manual testing afterwards before we release, etc., to make sure that everything's still working.
And then I suppose the other thing just in passing was I've used that LLDB on macOS, and I found it incredibly slow, but maybe that was just because I was on an underpowered macOS or I don't know, full debugging core. Is it pretty snappy on Android or on iOS View?
Yeah, it's acceptable performance on Android and iOS there. The LLDB console in both of the IDEs integrates pretty well with the IDE actually. So breakpoints set through it, for example, in Android Studio, will like pause and move you to the right place and everything in the same way that if you set the breakpoint in Android Studio directly, it would.
Yeah, I found just dumping the contents of a variable from the debugger could take 20, 30 seconds rather than instantaneously. I don't know if is that a general experience or just my problem.
Yeah, I mean, it's not as fast as debugging online with GDB, say, but it's not as slow as 20 or 30 seconds either.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
Thanks. Clove? Okay, thanks. Darshan? Okay. João?
Yeah, I actually have a question out of curiosity. It's about mobile, but not directly about Android apps. So the Android app is a web view. So I was curious for phones running Linux operating system, mainline Linux operating systems like Mobian or Postmarket OS. Which run the mainline Firefox, how hard would it be to trigger that web view on Firefox on those devices? Like simply switching the user agent to something like Android? What would be the best way to go about it?
Ooh, yeah, that's interesting. That's an interesting question. Yeah, so the way we do detection of mobile in online generally is we see what your user agent is, and then we also check your screen size. And that's how we determine if you're on a mobile device or a tablet. So yeah, if you had a mobile device, and you could give us some way to tell that via the user agent, then we would give you the normal mobile view in Collabora Online, and that is very similar to the one you would get in our apps. You'd be loading files from a server, presumably there. So I guess if you wanted to have it as an app, you'd also have to do a little bit of the native work there to get it reading from your file system and doing sockets more efficiently and stuff like that. But yeah, it sounds extremely plausible to me.
Thanks.
Thanks. Mike Agansky? Mm-hmm. Richard?
Hey, thanks. That was really good.
Mm-hmm. Sven?
Sorry, too early for me. So thank you. I'm in general, yeah. I mean, not today. I mean, too early for this matter to dive into. So in general, of course, I'm interested in this cross-platform testing. Keelan already mentioned it. Can we use our normal environment like Cypress unit tests, etc.? Yeah, again,
So
different.
yeah,
Mhm.
we do have Cypress tests for mobile, and that's the sort of mobile view that you would see when you when you load up a Collabora Online server on your mobile device. You'll see this same sort of web view. we couldn't test the more native functions. So file loading, the fonts that I mentioned, that sort of thing wouldn't be coverable by Cypress. But normal mobile actions, clicking around, using menus, that sort of thing, we can use Cypress to simulate taps and get that to work.
Ah, thank you. And that is run all on the target device. So not emulated, but on the target device. Yeah.
No, that is emulated. So our like our Cypress tests currently do quite a similar thing to if you go into Chrome and you turn on a mobile device simulation view there. It will show you the Collabora Online mobile view, and then we make the events be recognized as touch events rather than mouse events, and do a few other things around there. But it's not testing on the device.
Do we have an Android ADB emulation which is capable, like a setup where it's capable to run these test or native tools within the emulation itself?
No. Currently, we're doing Cypress. I think Miklos talked a little bit about how that could look earlier.
Yeah. Okay. Yep. Thank you.
Thanks. Hello and welcome, Karanda. Do you have any questions? I'm not sure if you joined earlier or just now. If not, it's okay. You can always see the recording. I was stuck in another meeting. No problem. This will be available soon on YouTube channel that I will be posting in the chat room.
Yeah,
On
it'll be on YouTube, and if you have any other questions for me as well, feel free to ping me in our Matrix channel. After the fact, I can answer them there as well.